Hey, 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 Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome to this episode of the Meaningful Work Podcast, a time I connect with you so that you align your career with God's plan for your life. I know I say something different every time you join me, right? Well, this conversation, I want to give Felicia a shout out who sent us an email and said, how do you deal with difficult people and have difficult conversations? She asked it in a different way. That's the way I'm going to say it. And so her ask was much longer, but the summary is that. And so, Felicia, thank you for your question. By the way, anytime you have something that you want us to talk about, whether I teach it or I bring on a guest, I want to out of the gate welcome you to send us an email and let us know your burning questions around meaningful work. You've got to understand that God's intention was for your work to give your life meaning, but there are things that bump up against your career, your job, your profession that you sometimes need a little level set. My goal in these conversations is to give you that level set. Again, whether it's me teaching or bringing a guest. So, this first part, so obviously this series, I'm doing a series, so this is me pouring into you, is called Navigating Difficulties at Work. It's a two-part series. This part, I'm going to talk about dealing with difficult people. And part two, I'm going to talk about having difficult conversations. Because if you're going to ever listen, I don't know anybody that hasn't had a difficulty at work. And so as I started to write my notes for this series, I always try to share a story. And I have so many stories to tell about having difficulties at work. How about y'all? Right? So difficulties looks like a boss that doesn't appreciate your brilliance, when you get overlooked for a role that you know you deserve, or maybe you have someone that is your counterpart that you don't get along with, or maybe you've had to let people go and you've had to deal with the difficult task of having that difficult conversation. If any of those things you've dealt with, if you haven't yet, you must be new in the career world. But I want to give you tools so that you navigate them in a different way. Listen, when we navigate our careers in a way that God would have us do it, it leads to that abundantly above all that He wants for us. So, my goal in this series is to give you tools to shift how you have these difficult moments and allow you to see how you need to be to come out as Michelle Obama would say, when they go low, we go high. How do you come out on the top? Mhm. So, as I was writing my notes, I started to say this for this series. I was trying to think of what example should I use. I've got many, but what kept coming in my mind is probably one of my worst difficulties I've dealt with at work. This was, those of you that don't know, my first job out of college, or first industry. For 10 years out of college, I worked in the entertainment industry, dream job. And now, toward the end of my tenure, I am working for a management company. And at the time, we were managing comedians. Matter of fact, if I'm going to keep it real, we were managing Def Comedy Jam comedians. So I remember the particular role I played at this time. I was an assistant to a manager. And let me tell you, none of our clients liked the manager, not one. So our clients wouldn't talk to our manager. They would only talk to me. I got this one hair, those of you that are live, I got this one hair that's all in my eye. Listen, our clients wouldn't talk to him. So in essence, I was their manager. I was doing all the work, being all the things, and he would get so heated. I would get them auditions. I would talk them through roles. I would talk them through deals they were getting ready to make. I would talk them through decisions and goals and all the things a manager should do. I was doing it. Why? Because our clients would not talk to him. I'm not going to say his name. And so I remember this last moment. I remember it like it was yesterday. And he would get so mad and totally cuss me out, and I would just sit silent, would never reply back, would rise above it. Because I'm thinking to myself, he should be mad at himself. He should be cussing himself out, not me. Right? Because it's not my fault that the clients don't like him. Yet, day after day, month after month, week after week, he kept on. Listen, I would even go to comedy clubs and see our clients, and people would come up to me to talk to me about the client. And sometimes he would be with me and no one would talk to him. So I'm sharing all that to say this. I remember this last day like it was yesterday. So another time, one of our clients, and by the way, this particular day, I can remember this conversation. So by the way, this client right now, as I'm filming this episode, has a TV show. Okay, so I want you to know we were not dealing with small comedians. He has a TV show on right now. I'm not gonna say his name, but he had called me. We had talked through something he was working on. And when I hung up, my boss, I'll call him W, so I won't say his name, was so pissed off, called me in his office and said, I told you not to. And he threw a book at me. Now, let me tell you guys, the Nicole that I was before I learned the skills that I'm going to teach you here. Listen, first of all, I'm from South Central LA. So I'm always, I used to, well, I'm so still always ready to fight. It's always in me. I don't exercise it. But old Nicole would have picked that notebook up and thrown it back at him, and we would have been going at it. Old Nicole, every time he yelled at me, would have yelled back at him, and we would have had a whole cuss out match. But this dad had enough, y'all. So when he threw that book at me, I dodged it. I walked to my desk. I picked up my purse. I walked to my car and drove home because I was like, I can't take this anymore. But I also knew I needed to calm down before I was going to call the CEO and quit. The CEO of the organization, Stan, who I still love to this day, one of my favorite bosses. Shout out Stan Lathan, love you if you ever see this, right? Stan called me and said, Nicole, I beg you, come back. We've been watching him. We're getting ready to let him go. We're getting ready to give you a raise, but I need you to be patient with me. Well, I'm not sharing that with you because it was the tools I'm going to give you here that helped me. I didn't know that my all the executives in the company were watching me. They were. I didn't know that because I had been rising above it, I was getting ready to make a chess move. Well, I wouldn't even go make it. They say that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So if I would have done it the way my flesh felt that I should do it, oh, we would have been having a whole cuss out, ain't my fault, nobody likes you kind of conversation. Never. And so it was the tools that I'm going to give you here that made the difference. And by the way, I've grown since then. And but in no means am I perfect. Do I have absolutely days that I don't use these tools? I do. Just like the rest of us. As long as we're in this flesh, we're going to battle with the flesh. But what I learned in my first moment of, and by the way, this is part one, dealing with difficult people. And those of you that are not on YouTube, just know that I always share slides when I'm on YouTube. So come on over to nrjnetwork.com. So the first thing I had to do when this first started happening, and this was probably my first set of difficulty that I began to learn to do things differently. In other roles and other jobs I had not done things differently, and it did not end well. And so the first question I began to ask myself is, you guys remember the WWJD campaign? Well, this was in the middle of it, by the way. What would Jesus do? And I began to say to myself, if Jesus had this fool, I said Jesus and fool in the same sentence, all in his face, yelling at him and screaming at him, how would Jesus handle this? Now, I'm in no way saying I'm Jesus because I'm not. But this began my study on how do I rise above? And again, how do I go high when they're going low, even though Michelle Obama wasn't around in the 90s when I was dealing with this fool. Yep, I said it. But how do I not stoop to his level? How do I rise above it? Another example of this is I remember being in a car with one of my good girlfriends who's known me since the ninth grade, or 10th grade, in high school, one of my best friends. And we're driving to somewhere. And I said, oh, let's stop and get my car washed. I'm driving into the car wash, and there's this guy driving all crazy, trying to zoom all around the car wash. And I ended up getting in front of him, not because I was trying. I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I ended up getting in front of him. So what does he do? He gets out of his car. He knocks on my window. Tap, tap, tap. And he starts cussing and yelling. And what do I say back to him? I said, we're both going to get our car washed today. And I rolled my window back up. And my girlfriend said, who are you? Because that is not how I would have handled it. But I'm telling you, when I started asking myself this question and started studying, exactly what I'm going to walk you through in this episode is what shifted everything for me. Again, starting with what would Jesus do? So I began to look at what would Jesus do? So I'm going to read to you Matthew 5:38 through 44. Again, Matthew 5:38 through 44, that says, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him too. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Now, listen, I remember when I was little and I first learned this Bible verse, I was like, turn the other cheek. Why would I let somebody slap me and then let them slap me on my other cheek? That's not what I think Jesus meant. Again, I think Jesus means rise above it. Right. So if I go back to that example of that, my boss who was cussing me out, I mean, this was happening on a daily basis, y'all, for months. How did I turn my other cheek? I ignored him. I didn't feed into it. I kept doing my job. Matter of fact, the more he yelled at me, the more our clients, first it was one client, then it was two, then all 10 of them started calling me and would not. One, when he would call them, would hang up on them and not talk to him. A second one would say, I don't want to talk to you. Have Nicole call me back. So I wasn't doing anything. But what I did was I tried to rise above it and I stooped to his level. Something my mother and my grandmother used to say to me all the time. And I believe that's what this Bible verse is saying. How do you keep your wits about you? How do you guard yourself and not allow yourself to go down to where they are, right? So he was teaching us not to hate, but to understand that you have a choice in any given moment. How will you deal with that? So I'm gonna give you some tips to deal with that. But first, I want you to identify when you have conflict. There are typically three kinds of conflict. Okay, there are actually five according to Detouch, somebody I studied. But these are the three most common, I believe. Right. So the first one is a conflict over resources. Maybe you're fighting over power. This is what was happening, by the way, with my boss. Maybe you're fighting over money. You're fighting over prestige. And sometimes you might be fighting over space. Maybe somebody has your office and you thought it should have been yours. Second one is preferences, preference differences, right? So maybe you're a dog person and you realize that you married somebody that likes cats. Or maybe you like cats and your husband likes dogs. And so a conflict comes because you have two different preferences. Like even dare I say, my husband and I always say I'm a little bit rock and roll. My husband's a little bit country. So I had to let go. I had to choose to. Do I fight to stay in the city? Or do I know that I can always drive to the city and enjoy the comfort of living out in the suburbs? Preferences. And I started realizing, well, crime is in the city, so maybe I should let go of the city. But again, that could have been a huge conflict in our relationship had I allowed it to be, right? Number three is values and beliefs. So this is where, by the way, many of you that are in relationships that don't work, when marriages don't work, sometimes it's about money, but sometimes it's right in one of these three. It's values and beliefs, I believe, is the biggest one. You know, when you have children and you are looking at how you want to raise your children one way and your partner wants to raise them in a different way, and you can't come to a middle ground, that conflict does not go away. That difference doesn't just dissipate. You got to do the work to find the medium, to find the middle, to have difficult conversations. We're going to talk about conversations tomorrow. But what do you have people that are difficult? And listen, you know what the conflict is. You've tried to resolve it, but they're still difficult. How do you deal with them? So there are three things that I've learned that really are the tools for you to deal with difficult people. Really are the three ingredients to deal with conflict, to deal when you're having conflict with people. So the first one is in alignment with what would Jesus do? Is the golden rule. Now, if you grew up in church like I did, you already know what this golden rule is. It is. Let me see if I put this on the slide. I did. So Matthew 7:12. So in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. Or another version is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I remember my grandmother saying that and saying that and saying that and saying that to me in nausea. Doesn't matter that so and so did that to you. Do to them what you would want done to you. So when I think about my boss who was acting a complete fool, in order for me to do to him what I would have now, mind you, the first time a client called me, I did to him what I would like people to do for me. I went and told him about it. And said, oh, so and so called me. I walked them through. And in that moment, I gave him the space for us to talk about how to shift this perspective. The first time he tried and honored me, but listen, he started getting more and more angry the more people started calling. So you've got to understand that you've got to exercise what I would call letting go of who's going to check me boo mentality. This one is hard because oftentimes you're thinking, oh, who's going to check me boo? Y'all remember that from Atlanta Housewives back in probably about 10, 15 years ago? By the way, when she first said that, I think I've tried to find every reason to say that to people. Who going to check me boo? Right? But when we have that mentality, you make it all about you. I'm going to pause for a minute because some of y'all needed just that. You're making it all about you. So you've got to let go of self-centeredness. And I think what was happening for my boss is he was having a who's going to check me boo moment. The reason why I could sit silent and not even go into the swirl of negative he was swirling is because I wasn't even going into that place. It wasn't about me. I was trying to make our clients happy, which was my role, point blank, period. So if you're going to be able to do that, you've got to do number two, check your spirit. Now, let me tell you guys, I got that comment, check your spirit, from my cousin Meaty, my sister cousin. Those of you that know me and know Meaty. And Meaty seems to always say that, and I'm sure she says it to other people too. I'm not alone. And Meaty, if you're watching this, shout out to you. But she will say that when I'm either thinking something, doing something, behaving some kind of way that's not in alignment with who I be. And anytime she says it, it snaps me back into who I know myself to be, into the woman that I know God wants me to be. Check your spirit. And the thing that's interesting is there's so many things that come into play that we don't realize are an emotional play. And if negative emotions are making you decide how to handle a situation, it's never going to be good. If you're deciding what you're going to do out of anger, out of sadness, out of hurt, any negative emotion, a decision made from that place is never going to be good. This is why that last time when I picked up my purse and walked out, I could feel the anger raging up in me. I knew I had to go home and calm down before I even tried to react to that. I could feel myself going back into old school, South Central LA. Listen, I went to high school where I've never had a fight. I could always talk myself out of a fight, but fighting was all around me, including I grew up in an abusive household, if I keep it all the way real. So fighting was all around me. So my first propensity is to fight. If I'm going to not react, I got to check my spirit and calm my soul and allow myself to calm down long enough to do what I'm going to tell you in number two. But let me just say this before I walk you into number two. Emotions are contagious. So if you allow yourself to get sucked in to that negative swirl that's happening, it just will grow. It's like a gremlin. Like I said this in another series. Gremlins grow because you feed them. So whatever you feed is going to grow. If you feed negative, it's going to grow. And in that moment, the only reason why that negative didn't grow on me is because I didn't feed it. I wanted to. I'm gonna be honest, right? So a couple of Bible verses to help you here are, where is it? Proverbs 4:23. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Again, that's Proverbs 4:23, right? Let me see if I have these on slides. I don't think I do. Nope. Next one here, Philippians 4:7. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ. But if you're going to have the peace of God, you got to go find your peace. It doesn't automatically happen, y'all. If you're going to make a wise decision in the middle of difficulty, you've got to find your peace to be able to do that. Another Bible verse here. This is about emotions being contagious and negative emotions for that matter. Proverbs 22:24-25. Again, Proverbs 22:24-25. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. So if you have people around you that function out of anger, be mindful, be diligent, understand that might end up seeping into your soul. Okay. The NCV version, I forgot what NCV is, but the NCV version of the same Bible verse says this: don't make friends with quick tempered people or spend time with those who have bad tempers. If you do, you will be like them. Then you will be in real danger. Okay. So again, you've got to go focus on the golden rule and check your spirit and let go of the who go check me movement mentality. That's number one. Now, number two, one of my favorites in the Bible, I don't think I've ever shared this on your podcast, is you got to choose wisdom over your feelings. So the only way you're going to get to that place where you can choose wisdom is to find that peace, to calm yourself down, to get into that place where you can release your emotion. Now, my favorite reference here is Solomon. Now, there's a whole story. I'm gonna tell you the quick version of Solomon's wise judgment, is what it's called in the Bible. 1 Kings 3:16-28. Again, that's 1 Kings 3:16-28. Now, the story goes like this: Solomon is king, and there are two women that have babies. Okay, and they both are servants in the palace, and no one's in the palace at the time that they're sleeping but the two of them. And one baby dies in the middle of the night and one is alive. So one woman accuses the other woman of stealing her baby and putting it in her bosom and then putting a dead baby in her bosom. So in other words, she's saying, hey, she took my baby. So Solomon has to choose who gets the baby. Now, this is a lot and this is hard. And I'm like, oh my God, how do you make a choice? Here's what Solomon says back. Okay, so this is 1 Kings 3 23. The one and the king said, the one says, this is my son who lives, and your son is the dead one. And the other says, no, but your son is a dead one, and my son is a living one. Then the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword before the king, and the king said, divide the child in two. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing I think is so interesting is for him to even think to do this, right? Then the woman whose son was living spoke to the king, for she yearned with compassion for her son and said, oh Lord, give the other one the living child. By no means kill him. So because she was begging for him to live, he knew that was her child. The other woman didn't care because her child was already dead. And I love this because this really shows that wisdom dissipates when you've got to make a tough decision, when you're dealing with difficult people. Because the one woman wanted the other child to die. She didn't care. She either wanted him or she wanted him dead. The thing I love, if you study Solomon and really study Proverbs, which was written by Solomon, Proverbs is a book of wisdom. He teaches you all the ways to make wise decisions, to have wise counsel, right? So again, that could have ended up totally different. But what Solomon does is proposes a test to see who will rise to the top. And sometimes I believe we go through these hard times in our careers to go through a test. If I give you another example, I was working adjunct faculty at a college and I was speaking a lot at the time. And my the chair of my department used to do meetings on Fridays. Well, I was traveling on Fridays at the time. And so I kept saying to him, I can't meet on Fridays. And he kept challenging me and challenging me and challenging me and challenging me. It was so bad. I mean, it got to a point where I wanted to quit. And every time I wanted to quit, I could hear my spirit, don't quit yet. I'm just like, oh, never yelled at him. I mean, he'd always try to do meetings on Fridays or have summits on Fridays or things that I had to be a part of on Fridays. And so I kept rising above it. Sometimes he said, can you be Friday at noon? I go, I can be Thursday at 2. I never said no. I started learning how to really utilize, how can I maneuver him to see it in a different way? Instead of looking at, I'm not coming on a Friday. How about I just propose something different? Do you know that man ended up getting fired? Hello. And my new head of the department, who had been the assistant, she said, Nicole, I don't care when you come to work. Just when you have your classes and when you see your students on that, you come when you need to. But had I quit, I would have missed an opportunity to pour into the students I had the opportunity to pour into while I worked in that place. And you never know how God is using you as a light in a dark place. And when you let difficulties dissipate your position because you don't want to deal with it or because you're dealing with it the wrong way, and so you get let go. Listen, had I gone off in the chair of my department like I wanted to, because I told y'all I'm in this flesh, oh, I know I would have gotten fired, especially if I would have said to him what I wanted to say. So number 3, so again, number 1 is the golden rule. Number 2 is wisdom over feelings. Wisdom over feelings, right? So number 3 is accept things and people for what or who they are. There are times that you're going to have to deal with people that you don't like. There are going to be things and situations in your career that are going to be things you don't like. Doesn't mean you quit. I remember, third story, told you I got a lot of them, y'all. I had somebody on my team who used to come in my office. I used to do supervision with my staff once a month. And she'd come in my office every month crying. So I would always say, go finish crying and then come back when you're done. I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like dealing with it. And she was the most difficult person I had on my team. So I was like, I really am not dealing with that. It wasn't until I said, you know what? I pulled out a piece of Kleenex. I said, take a deep breath and let's talk through what's coming up for you. When I did that and helped her walk through it, do you know she ended up being my best trainer? She ended up bringing us the most money in my division. But before that, I didn't want to deal with it. I tried to act like it wasn't there until I got into an acceptance place. And so I'm trying to make her into something that she wasn't. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I started thinking to myself, if I was having such a hard day that I'm coming crying like this at work, I mean, I'm talking about crying hard, not just a couple of tears. She'd be boohoo crying. What I didn't realize is she was dealing with something on a personal note that was so difficult that for some reason she felt comfort when she came in my office. It was because I was willing to have that conversation that I helped move her out of that negative space and helped her perform on a much higher level. Difficulty that I didn't want to deal with. And again, you can't please everybody all the time, right? There's a Bible verse, Galatians 1:10, that says, "For do I now persuade men or God, or do I seek to please men? For if I still please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ." In other words, you can't walk around just trying to be a male pleaser, a woman pleaser, a people pleaser. But when you are who God has created you to be, when you live as the highest and best version of who God has created you to be, and I'm going to tell you that choice sometimes when people are acting a fool and you're ready to go off is not easy, but it's always worth it. When you accept the things that you cannot change, that you have the gracious carefulness, I was going to say careless, but it's not careless. You have the graceful love. I remember Michael Jackson being interviewed once, and he said, "I'm saying this with LOVE." And I say that sometimes to my team. I'm saying this with LOVE, with as much love as I can put on it when it's difficult. It's really stopping to really look at how are you, one, going to let go? Who's going to check me, boo? How are you checking your spirit? How are you choosing to make a wise decision and not one from your feelings? And how do you accept the person for who and how they are? Especially if they're on your team and they might do phenomenal work. And I'm telling you, that woman, after I allowed her to get through all the things that I didn't feel like dealing with for months, her ability to do her job was at a heightened level because I had to let go of who I thought she should be to serve who she was in that moment. And I wonder what would happen if you let go what you thought your boss should do, or how you thought your boss should act, or how you thought a counterpart should be, or et cetera, et cetera. And you began to accept them for who they are, and you rose above anything that could keep you from being the highest and best version of who God created you to be. So that's it about dealing with difficult people. Listen, part 2, I'm going to talk about having difficult conversations. I'm going to walk you through, sorry, y'all, my throat is doing extra. I'm going to walk you through a whole way to have hard conversations. Okay. So bring your pen to number 2, get ready and listen. You guys know I'm going to ask you, as I always do, what value did you get out of this? Are you in a place where you're dealing with difficulty at your workplace? I want to know. I want to know, has this blessed you? I want to know questions you have. I want to know all the things. And before I close, let me leave you with this. I have an example, and I forgot to say it, accept people for who and how they are. Joseph is a great example of this. So here's your homework. Go read Joseph's story if you've never read it. Genesis chapter 37 through 50. Genesis 27, chapters 37 through 50 in Genesis. The thing I love about Joseph's story is every hard thing he went through, who he was. He never shifted. He rose above it. He never stooped to anybody's level. He never did all the things that I was thinking, what? Great example. Great example of how to have grace under pressure. And that's what you've got to learn how to do, how to have grace under pressure. All right. And so, very last thing I'm going to share, then I am going to close up. James 1:19 through 20. So then, my brethren or sisters, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. The wrath of man does not produce. You know, I've seen how God has totally, when I decide to go high, when everybody else is going low, I told you both examples I gave you, both men got fired. I didn't do anything about that. All I did was live as the highest and best version who God created me to be. I chose to seek wisdom and seek peace and not go off like I wanted to. I chose to check my who gonna check me boo spirit, because trust me, it was there. And I see how that has blessed me. Because whether you realize it or not, every place you work, listen, even though I don't work in entertainment anymore, I still have bumped up against it. I still have clients that have come from that industry. I still have people that refer people from those days. And I see how, what's that Bible verse say? All things work together for the good, Romans 8:28, all things. See, all the lessons I learned there helped to strengthen me. All the things I learned from strategy to training to all the program development pieces I learned in the midst of diversity and difficulty has helped me become the great practitioner that I am today. All right. So with that said, y'all, that's part one. Let me stop rambling. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your insight. Listen, please share. I ask you to share every week because listen, I know there's somebody else in your network that needs this insight and they may not even know this podcast exists. All right. Share your takeaways. I'll see you next time for part two. Bye, y'all.